I think let's be supportive of each other as churches around the city and the state and the country, because that's a negative marketing thing for the world too.
Hey everybody, thanks for checking out Be Original with Isley Creative,
where we take a behind-the-scenes look at the world of effective marketing.
Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy. Welcome back to the Be Original podcast. My name is OJ.
And I'm Christian.
And today is a very special day. We have a very dear friend. He is the head pastor of Journey Church. Is head pastor the right way of saying that?
Lead pastor is good. Head pastor.
Lead pastor of Journey Church. He's married, has 3 kids, 4 grandkids. When you see him, you'll know he does not age whatsoever. He's one of the most beautiful humans I've ever seen in my life. He married me and my wife 13 years ago, which is pretty amazing. And he's been a huge part of my personal life for a very long time. Please welcome a very special person, Pastor Kevin, or PK, as we call him. Is that cool?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be here today.
I love you. It's so good to see you.
You too.
If you went to church, you might see him more.
Yeah, if I went to church.
Oh, see, that's how it is. All right.
Shots fired. Well, I am, it's funny that I was thinking about this last night when we were getting ready for today. And one of the things I was thinking about is you really have been in my life for a very long time. Like I remember playing drums with you, like in the pit of the orchestra pit and at First Assembly at the time.
Yeah, literally watched you grow up.
That's crazy.
Yeah, we didn't have a beard.
I did not have a beard.
No,
and
I
was
a fro.
Yeah, I had an afro. And I was a little bit more out of control then.
Yeah. I think you're probably still out of control.
That's probably true too. All right, well, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself? Like what got you to where you're at today? How you came to Kenosha? I mean, you can go back as far as you want to go, I guess. But the audience wants to know about you.
Okay.
So tell us.
Yeah, so I was like born in a cradle, and no, we won't go back that far. But we've been married for 38 years. And so, I mean, it's crazy to talk about those numbers, but we've served in churches, 4 different churches in the upper Midwest. So we have been a worship pastor is kind of was our bread and butter for a lot of years. That's how we first met, and Christian too, as worship pastor.
Yeah.
And then really God just directed our steps from Illinois to Minnesota. We were in Minnesota for 10 years, and then Wisconsin for the last 25.
Wow.
So
you've been here for 25 years.
I've been here 23, but in Appleton for 2 years before we got here.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, God's been so faithful to us in that journey, journey, no pun intended. It's my church name now, but we came to the church we're at now as a worship pastor and doing all the worship and musicals and all that stuff. And
remember that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's going way back.
Yeah.
I used to love those times because it'd be like a week straight of us at church every night.
At least.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
Plus all the rehearsals.
Yeah, plus all the rehearsals.
Yeah.
But camels,
Good
right?
times.
On stage,
all the live animals
donkeys
and stuff.
and cows.
Yeah, it's pretty
All of
impressive that
that.
we never had any like major issues with those live animals in the church.
Yeah,
right?
or all the pyro.
Or pyro.
Or all the pyro. Yeah.
Hell's
Man.
Gates, Heaven's Flames. Ooh.
Yeah. I mean, we'd have like scoopers picking up after the cows and stuff like that. But it was fun. But then the last 15 years has been leadership.
Yeah.
So doors open for that.
So you are currently the lead pastor at Journey Church. What does that all entail for you as like a job?
Yeah. Well, it's really leading teams.
Yeah.
I'm leading all of our pastors and really pouring into them is really my role. And then visioning for the church. What's the direction of the church? Yeah. I'm not so much in the weeds anymore, whatever that means, but I'm not in so much of the details. The organization's big, and it's 4 campuses now, not just one. It's one church in 4 locations. So it's really pouring into other leaders, and so that they can pour into the people that they lead. Yeah, that's really the biggest part of my job now, and doing stuff like this, which is fun.
Give us some perspective. Obviously, I know it doesn't really matter, but what is the attendance like at all of your campuses on a weekend basis?
Yeah. Well, the total of all the campuses is about 3,000 on a weekend. We have the Kenosha campus is the larger of the campuses, but we have a campus in Beach Park, Illinois, and then one in Burlington, Wisconsin, and then our newest campus, just like 5 months old, is in Lithuania in Eastern Europe.
Very cool.
So that one just opened.
Very
so that's
cool.
really cool.
Well, that's awesome. One of the things, and obviously the big reason, we'll just get right into that. One of the big reasons we wanted to talk to you today is, we spend all of our time marketing and talking to people about your message and how to get it out there, practical ways of, creating content on a regular basis, like those types of things. But I think we forget about, and this is the thing that Christian and I have been talking about too, is I think we forget about how marketing influences our life in every aspect. It's not just when it comes to a product or a service or a company or a small business.
Right.
I mean, we're talking about everything. And it goes even as far as saying that, you are in your position a marketer of sorts, right?
Right.
And there are 3,000 people that are a part of your organization on a weekly basis that are coming there because they're interested in hearing a message about something that they can relate to their own lives, and they can go out and they come in one way, they leave a different way, like they leave a better way.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Right.
How do you do that?
Very carefully. Yeah. But I mean, everybody has the same problems.
Oh, interesting.
That's my problems are the same as yours. As the same as a person down the street, people who've been, walking with God, if you want to say it that way, for 40 years, as opposed to people who've never met God.
Yeah.
I mean, I still have stress issues. I still have marital issues. Don't tell Jolene that, but I do. We do, right?
Absolutely.
I still have financial issues. I still have lack of peace issues.
Yeah.
I still have. I mean, that's the marketable part of that, is that I'm the same as you.
Oh, that's good.
I'm in a different part of my journey, but I'm still struggling with that stuff. And so people come in, they all want to know the same thing. How do I have a better life? And what's the road to the better life? I mean, our answer would be God would be that road.
It's so good because we've spent a lot of time, even in the last 5-6 interviews that we've done, we keep coming back to this whole human to human thing. And it's so interesting what you just said is exactly the point. Like in marketing, we talk a lot about building a culture around a product or a service that is intriguing to those people, and those are your people. They buy your product, they buy your service, and it's not necessarily about the product or the service. It's about what that group and that community can offer you. And what you just said is exactly it. Like, we are humans. We all struggle with different things in life, but that one common thing that we can find together, whether it's church or extracurricular activities, whatever it is, that's the road to helping us be better or do better, I guess, is what I would say.
Yeah. It's interesting how similar a church can be to everything else in the world because it's created from people, right?
Right.
So every church has a culture. Whether it's good or bad, that's to be determined, right? But every church, every business, every group of friends has created its own culture. And, through the episodes that we've filmed so far, we've talked about how to drive that culture. And I think it's funny because most businesses have a mission statement, have core values, things like that. And I feel like a lot of that has derived from faith-based organizations.
Sure.
Like most churches for years have had some sort of mission statement. You know what I mean? And it obviously comes from the Bible, or if it's not a Christian church, it's something else. It comes from what they root their belief system in. And it's the same thing in business. And I think that's interesting. That's why OJ and I thought you'd be an incredible guest on here, because it's a good perspective that faith drives all of us one way or another. We believe something that we can't see. We step into a belief system, whether it's atheist or agnostic or Christian or Buddhist or Muslim, like we all have some sort of thing that we grasp onto.
Right.
And if we don't, we feel a lack of purpose. We feel a lack of something.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing. Like OJ said, that it's not necessarily the product. I mean, for us, when it is your belief system, you're like, yes, it is the product. But for a lot of people, it's not, that don't quite have that or haven't quite bought into something.
Right.
It's not the product, it's the culture. And what's interesting about Journey is I feel like church culture, a lot of the time, there's a fast turnover in leadership and people and all sorts of stuff. And Journey has had not a lot of that.
Not a lot of that.
Not compared to, I would say, most churches, especially at its size.
Right.
And I was just recently talking with Sam, Pastor Sam,
Mm-hmm.
who's newer youth pastor. And he was like, this place is incredible. Like, I don't understand how these people have been here in leadership for 15 years, 20 years.
Yeah. That's great.
There's something to be said about the
Sure.
culture that Journey Church is creating
Yeah.
to keep people around, right?
There's an upside and a downside to that.
Yeah.
You know, because Sam will come in as a new guy with fresh eyes.
Yeah.
On a culture that I've been in for 23 years.
Yep.
So there are things that he sees right away that I go, oh, I didn't. That's just what we do.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
Yeah.
not good.
Right.
The fresh eyes
Yeah.
see that. So there's good to longevity. You know, people begin to trust you, and you can create a culture of confidence. People have in you. The downside is that we stop seeing things that really need to be changed because this is how we do it
Yeah.
after 25 years.
Yeah.
But I think that the everybody has to believe in their product,
Yeah.
you know, and their culture. Product and culture kind of go together. But I think, like, doesn't Three Musketeers, people think that the Three Musketeers bars is the best bar ever.
Sure.
They have to believe in their product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I go to a place like a Chick-fil-A or something like that, where they think literally they have the best organization in the world. They
Yeah.
think that.
Yeah.
You might not think that. But when I walk into some places, I just get a sense that they think this is the best place you could be on the planet. And it may or may not be, but they're helping me buy into that just by their
Yeah.
confidence. And I think that we believe in what we believe, that when people come, that there is a culture, but it's faith.
Yeah.
You know, that's the product, if that's almost sounds gross to say it that way. But
Yeah. So, okay, I want to ask you a question, but I don't really know the best way of asking this, because how do you feel about the view of, if I look at a church and I look at it, the church in itself, the building and the people inside of it, I mean, it operates a lot. I mean, it operates just like any other organization. There's leaders, there's people that, you know, execute the work. I mean, all the way down. And is it viewed differently from internally for you guys, or is it viewed like, is it actually viewed as a corporation or a business, or is it really just about faith? Like,
no, it's a combination of those two. We are not, you know, if you have a church, and I'm all about speaking positively into all people who are, you know,
sure,
putting Jesus forward. I'm for them. But it's different having a church of 100 or 200 than having a church of 3,000 or a church of 10,000. You know, that culture is different.
Yeah.
You have to lead it differently. You know, when you have the 100, we all know everybody's business. You know, we're a family church. You know, and that's good. That's how you start with that. But you can't keep leading it that way. You know, because at some point you'll have to have people coming in who don't know your business and don't want to know your business, and it has to be okay that I don't know your business.
sure,
And so as you get to the thousands, there is an element there, and this will be a turnoff to some people to even say this, but there has to be good fiscal responsibilities happening. There has to be organization. There has to be almost a CEO mentality in some ways, but you can't lose what you're about.
See, and that's the interesting part, because that's what I was trying to get at. I think a lot of people, especially the people that are in the church, a lot of people view it very differently. And I've always thought, if you view it like that, like an organization, and that is this is a terrible way of saying it, but of selling a product like faith and all of these things, right? Like, I just feel like the transitions now, pivoting from where we used to be with maroon floors and pews and things like that. Now all of a sudden, like, that's where I think it comes into effect, because you have to pivot. We have to move past all of that. And so this is where it becomes a business decision. You're evolving as a business just like we do on a regular basis. Right. And now we're talking about, okay, now it's shifting, because, your approach to the message, your approach to, these thousands of people is even transitioning. Yeah. It's not just the outward appearance and the look. It's not the fancy lights and all the cool stuff that is happening. Now we're having to move that message in a different way, but it's not, that's where I feel like people can get.
Well, everybody has pain points.
Sure.
And it's just like, every business, their job is to solve a pain point, right? And it's the same thing with churches. And it's funny because I think about it like, the essential oil craze. And when somebody's like, oh, I'm feeling this way, and somebody's like, oh, just put this on it,
Yeah, right.
It's the same principle in a sense of, like, the difference is it's the Bible that you're applying to those pain points. Yeah. And you have to figure out what those pain points are now versus 10 years ago.
The church has always been on the backside of that in a way that I think has been unhealthy and wrong. When when the radio came out, which is before all of us, even me.
Yeah.
The
You're
church
30.
said,
you said you were 30.
And then, well, double that and it would be close. That they didn't want anything to do with the radio, because it was like the devil's instrument, until like we were laughing, but it's true, until like 20 years later, when everybody just had accepted the radio, and then the church said, I guess maybe we should get on the radio. Yeah. Same thing with television. We didn't want anything to do with television when it came out, even though, it's not evil. It's a good marketing kind of moment. Yeah. The same with the internet. The church said, I don't think that we want to be part of that until 20 years later or whatever. Yeah. Then they go, I guess maybe we should, and we should. Yeah. And I think people, push back when you use the word business. Yeah. In connection with the church. Yeah. I don't, but I think that people do. Yeah. Because all of a sudden it's become a worldly moment, but we're here. Yeah. We're in the world. We don't have the same values, but I mean, we like electricity. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, we need, and I think that when this is on one of the walls at all of our campuses, that we have to be able to pour the gospel, the living water, out of containers that we've never poured out of. The gospel doesn't change. It's the same. Yeah. Yesterday, today, forever. But the containers that we pour it out of, if those don't change, then we're in deep trouble.
Oh, that's interesting. So, give me an example of what does that container look like? Like compared to, so like, well, maybe that's a better way of saying, like, what does it look like when you're taking, 10 years ago versus today? Is there an example that you can think of off the top of your head? Like, it was very different 10 years ago when we were talking about this, to whereas today it's different because of this. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of things like that. I mean, if we just talk about translations of the Bible, that we used to, speak in King James kind of language. Yeah. If I look at videos or they weren't even videos then, or audios of sermons and stuff like 30, 40 years ago, the language is very different. It was much more conservative and formal. Maybe that's a better word. It was just formal. Yeah. We're reading out of a translation of the Bible that it's hard to understand it. Yeah. And today, let's use some others. We haven't changed the Bible. We've just changed our ability to grasp it. Music. Yeah. Would be an easy one to go to. And those wars continue. Yeah. In churches, sadly. But a church has to, decide their culture. What is our music going to be? And so, 30 years ago, we were doing very different music. And I'm guessing that 30 years from now, when I'm for sure not going to be the lead pastor of Journey Church, I'm guessing the music will be different. Yeah. It better be different.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
It has to be, right?
Has to be. If you want to call that business, fine. That's okay. But it's just, I would call it rather than business. I would just say it's wisdom.
Sure.
Yeah.
I heard an interesting quote, and I forget, I don't remember who said it, but I remember listening to somebody talk about the church, and the conversation was loosely around the view of using the church, viewing it as a business and operation, and separating it with all of these things. And one of the topics that came up was, you have this very, let's call it a divided church style.
Yeah.
So you have the old school,
sure,
and you have the new school, which I would consider Journey and, huge churches like Elevation and all of these other places.
For sure.
But it's interesting because they get the new church gets so much hate because of the music, because of all the fancy lights and the fancy presentations and of the message. And this guy's rebuttal to that was, well, we serve a God that created the universe, the greatest thing that ever was created.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I want to express that with the greatest thing that I can create? Like, I can create really great music, and I can create really great teaching tools and things like that. Why wouldn't we want to do that kind of a thing? And I thought that was an interesting approach to it, because truthfully, why not?
And most of that, as we talk about marketing, is that those are the things that will separate people today. It isn't the gospel. It isn't the preaching of the Bible and the Word of God. That's not what separates churches today. It's those other things. It's let's renovate the space. Because after all, Starbucks, they're renovating. There's a reason that they're not renovating for nothing. Because they've done studies and they've decided that I guess we better do this. McDonald's, they're renovating. And so if the church wants to renovate, sometimes people go, well, we really shouldn't do that, because, why? Let's just preach the Bible. And won't everybody just love that? And no.
There's so many politics involved, politics in the church. But sometimes people have asked me that a few times, because I've gone to a few different churches, including Journey, and I attend Journey now, and I'm very involved in Journey, and probably more so than I have been involved in most churches, because there's opportunity for me to be involved. But I think that sometimes I like to equate it to like an Uber. Like you can call an Uber and it shows up and it's kind of falling apart and may smell weird on the inside, right? And some people will be like, nah, I'm going to cancel this and wait for a different one. And then the next one shows up and it has leather interior and they have water sitting in the back, and then you're like, okay, this is better. And then you actually get in the car. There's nothing different. Like, both Uber drivers and cars will get you where you need to go, right? They both use gas. They have the same fuel to get you where you need to go. But one is more welcoming and makes you feel comfortable and allows you, like, you'll actually have a conversation with the driver, right, and, things like that, where the other one is maybe, a little bit tougher to get through or break through, right?
Sure.
And I've recognized that. Each one has a place for everybody. Everybody has a different mindset. And, sometimes you'd be like, well, I'll just take this because I need to get where I'm going. It doesn't matter, and maybe I like this because I don't have to tip as much or something like that.
The other thing about that is generationally, as we talk about marketing, because all you have to do is, because there are certain products that the millennials or Gen Z, they veer to. The people my age aren't buying those products.
Yeah.
The millennials are buying those products.
Yeah.
And we have to have millennials and Gen Zs in our church.
Yeah.
Because if we don't, to your point, thank you that I'm 30 times 2. Appreciate that.
No problem.
But I can't have a church full of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or we're in trouble.
Yeah.
So if you want to call it marketing, that's great. I'm okay with that word, but that's really what it is. I mean, we have to find a way to get that generation in the church.
Okay, so you bring up a very good point. So that's what I wanted to touch on next. Is it's not from a church perspective, we're not talking about marketing. Okay, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but in my mind, we're not talking about marketing to the people that already come week after week, that have been there for 10 years, 5 years, even 2 years. We're talking about this because ultimately the job of the church is to get people that don't normally come to church into church.
Right.
So now all of a sudden you're like, that is the marketing aspect of it. Like, we're trying to drive those people through the doors.
Right.
And so how do you as a church shape that message? Or even, is it as easy as a look? Is it as easy as when you walk in the door, you feel like you're in a Starbucks? Like, is it that easy? Or does it go to, you talked about different translations of the Bible, but does it go to a different understanding or a different viewpoint even of what you're reading or what you're trying to teach the people that are coming through your doors?
Yeah, it's all of that. It's the design and the colors and the cafe and the lobby.
Yeah.
That works for great first impressions. So that'll get people in the door. Mm-hmm. That doesn't keep people.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, they can get a better coffee than in the lobby of Journey Church on a Sunday, please.
The person
there's better coffee out there.
The person that runs your cafe is going to be so mad right now.
We have good coffee, but it's not. Come on.
Sure.
It's,
yeah.
So that will draw, the lights and the fog and all of that stuff. That will bring people.
Yeah.
But that will never keep anybody.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so how do you market that, the word that you're bringing to them? Does that change?
No, the word doesn't change, but the things that we talk about can change. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there are probably sermons back 50 years ago that we're not doing those sermons anymore. Mm-hmm. We're not talking as much about what in Revelation, what does the pinky on the beast represent?
Sure.
And
then debate about it for weeks.
Right. That's a loser. So
I love it.
It's in the Bible, so it's all good. But there are things that apply to millennials' lives that we need to speak to. We were never speaking about racial reconciliation 25 years ago. Those are subjects that we need to talk about today. Yeah. So that's an example of how culture has changed, and those are things that that we have to say. Mm-hmm. We have to take a stand on some of that.
So we're not changing the Bible.
No.
We're not changing the Bible. We're not even changing the words that are spoken in the Bible.
For sure.
But we're applying it to different scenarios, different issues.
Yeah.
Because we deal with different issues.
Yeah.
Do we deal with different issues?
It's the same and it's different.
Amplified.
Yeah. I mean, because there's still stress, there's still financial pressures, there's still marital issues, there's still relationships.
Yeah.
Those transcend time. We're still gossiping. We're still, doing all those things.
Yeah.
Millennials are gossiping.
Yeah.
So we still get to preach about that.
Yeah.
But there are things in their lives, there are more singles among us now. Mm-hmm. So, you speak to that, even within a message. You don't have to craft a message just for that, but you can use illustrations that apply to that age group, or you can use, we can talk about Kanye, and use that as part of, the presentation. So, our ears kind of stay with me, you know what I'm saying?
Okay, we have to talk about Kanye.
Okay.
No, I'm serious. I
love Kanye.
What?
Yeah. Why wouldn't you?
Why are you surprised?
I honestly am floored. No, I'm not floored with you. With you, I'm not floored because you have a very special, I think, a very special outlook on life. A real outlook on life, I think, is a better way of saying it.
I said it in church about 2 or 3 months ago, I think, when that whole thing came, and I heard some stuff, through emails and stuff, like what's not real or whatever. I don't know if it's real. I mean, it's not my place to say it's real or not, but let's just watch the fruit. And so just stood in a Sunday morning and said, hey, whatever you think about what's going on, one thing I know that we all should do is pray for Kanye.
Sure.
So we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
Let's pray for Kanye. There's no debate. There's no argument about that. But he did a concert in Chicago a couple weeks ago. So I wasn't able to go, but I wanted to go.
Yeah.
But I had some friends go. I mean, and they came back and said it was like total Jesus the whole time.
Oh, wow.
I mean, he was preaching. I mean, it was real. So I'm a Kanye fan.
So it's interesting because like I don't remember who I was talking to about it. I don't remember who I was talking to about it, but somebody had mentioned something to me about it and it being fake and this whole publicity stunt and thing. And I just said like, I just said like, I don't really care. I don't really care if it's a publicity stunt because quite frankly, we hear about it on Sunday mornings. God uses unsaved people all the time to deliver certain things to people that need it that are in need. So whether Kanye is, like you said, it's not my place to judge where Kanye is in his spiritual life. The only thing that I know is that if Kanye is putting a question in young people's minds on whether or not Jesus is real or these things are real, that's all we need. Like that's Kanye is doing something that we're not doing, and that we're not doing a good enough job at, or we're just not doing it at all. Whatever it is, but he can still. I mean, and that's again going back to marketing. Like it all is the same thing. Like all of a sudden now this message is in the mainstream. One of the largest, hip hop artists of our time right now. He's one of the best.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden he does this 180 and it's like, I don't know. It was crazy.
And that's all part of the marketing. And I don't think that there's anything sinful in that. In fact, I think that it's wrong not to.
Yeah.
Because then we could talk about Snoop Dogg instead or Luther Vandross.
Sure.
But
Snoop Dogg did
I know, yeah. But why don't we do? Let's talk about Kanye. I mean, that's like today or yesterday or whatever. I think it would be wrong to elevate him. To a position where we really follow him or idolize him. And if he's a believer, with all respect, he's a fresh believer.
Sure.
He's a new believer. So there's lots of stuff about the gospel he does not understand.
Sure.
I mean, that's just because that's how it works.
Yeah.
So let's not put him on a pedestal and all that. But frankly, I don't want to be put on a pedestal. So, I mean, there's only one way down from that. That's pedestal is down.
Yeah.
So I'd rather not be put on one. Or have him on one either.
Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too that there's because of the change. We talked a little bit about how things have changed over the years, but I think the biggest thing is our access to things. That makes everything harder. So the struggles are different, and you go back to somebody like Kanye who was very vocal about his struggles over the years. This is what kind of got me on this track was he was very vocal about all of his struggles. And 20, 30, 40 years ago, you would have never heard anybody admit to any of that. Like his psychological struggles, the depression and the things that he's dealt with. And not only him, but everybody. We are constantly bombarded with thoughts that are marketed to us, one way or another. So it's made marriages harder. It's made staying in whatever you believe the parameters are of a dating relationship harder. It's made just keeping your eyes off of things that are not healthy for your mind harder because it's normal and it's always in your face. And if the church doesn't start doing that, which I think a lot of churches are at this point, but if the church hadn't started doing that, there's nothing to combat that. And that's the craziest thing is the same thing in marketing. If you see people sharing a message that isn't true, or maybe they're selling a product that is garbage and you're selling a better one, like what are you going to do? Let them just keep marketing more than you and sell the product that isn't great?
Right.
Or are you going to step it up and put more dollars behind it and do whatever you have to do to engage with that audience to say this product is the real deal, That's good.
One of the areas of marketing that is a little bit on the grieving side for me with what I do is that when Burger King, puts an ad up, how about Wendy's Burgers, and how that they're no good or whatever, and other industries do that with each other. The church should not do that.
Yes.
Agreed. But we get sucked into the competition of that and the marketing. Like if I could just present myself a little better than the church down the street, then more people would come. And it becomes about the old ABC, which is attendance, buildings, and cash.
Oh, yeah.
And it can't be about that at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It has to be about the gospel. It has to
Right.
be.
Well, and that's what I'm referring to is sharing the truth more often and in a more effective way than people that are sharing lies.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's the same. It's the same across the board. It's thumb stopping power. It's creating content that people actually stop and look at. It's sending a message and creating endless amounts of content because that's what they're seeing on a regular basis.
Right.
The only way to get rid of it is to do more
Yeah.
than it, or do it differently or do it louder. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And not obnoxiously and not calling people out, but just stating the truth.
Right.
I think that's important, and I think that's what a lot of churches are starting to do now, and not just in social media, but even on Sunday mornings. We recognize what's going on in culture now because of social media. So during the week, you can be up with current events and know that this just happened, and on Sunday morning you have a point to relate to people that might be in pain over that situation or people questioning that situation, and you're actually able to give people practical truths to combat that in real time, which we've never been able to do. Back in the day, you'd have to wait till the newspaper came out and you saw what happened 2 weeks ago, or
and that's
whatever
part of the marketing. And we've been taught using that word, throwing that word around here today. A lot of people in my industry, they wouldn't even want to call it an industry, but they wouldn't like the word marketing,
right?
Because it brings up other things that they would classify as worldly. But just what you said is part of the marketing. Also, that if we this weekend, for instance, if we speak to the coronavirus, that is a marketing thing.
Yeah.
I mean, in some sense, right?
Yeah.
That, hey, we're aware
of
what's going on, and people are sitting in the seats wondering about that.
Yeah, they're nervous. It's creating anxiety or whatever it is. You know.
There's a tsunami in Thailand. People want to respond to that in America and to say, hey, why don't we take an offering and why don't we send some funds, to help people or whatever. That, to me, that really is a marketing issue.
Well, that's the big thing is marketing gets this negative connotation all the time that's just directly attached to dollars or numbers or smoke and mirrors or I'm going to trick you into doing this. But the reality is marketing is just communication. Right. It's a form of communication. And the whole point of marketing is to connect with people. And that's what the church does, and I think that's what...
Well, that's what they should do.
Yeah, creating community in a way that gives people a place to be heard, a sense of value, a sense of purpose. And, that's a lot harder in bigger churches to do, right? To connect them to a close community.
There's more of everybody.
Yes.
In a bigger church. So you have to try to figure out,
that's an interesting way of saying that. I like that, actually. There's more of
the demographic.
You have the old timers, you have the people who would really hate this podcast because we talk about marketing in the church. And then you have the people who would just thrive on it. You're trying to hit all those people every weekend somehow.
So this brings me to my next question. So when you're, I'm assuming you spend a good amount of your week preparing for Sunday morning or your weekend services. And
at least 15 minutes.
At least 15 minutes.
At least.
Good. Good. I'm glad you're preparing yourself. But really, like how do you prepare yourself for those conversations? Because like when you're getting ready for your weekend, we just talked about like there's things that are happening ongoing. How do you prepare yourself to communicate like in real time effectively to these people that are dealing with
such a variety
of different things?
I mean, that's a great question, and I don't even know if I know how to answer it totally. I mean, I do a lot of reading and a lot of listening and a lot of internet. I'm up on what's happening in the world, and it's not that hard. It's not that hard to craft a message where the illustrations that you use are today. I lean more to that group than I do to the other group. So it's all I can say is it's worked for us. So I don't know. That's not a great answer to that question.
No,
but
I guess for me it's just, yeah. I mean, we kept before you even came. That was the thing. Like, it's got to be hard. It's got to be hard to be able to communicate to so many people. But maybe what we're saying is that because the message rings true through everything, you know, it's okay to, like, we're not trying to combat everybody's issue every weekend.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. So we're choosing an issue that obviously is relevant to what we're going through at the time.
Yeah. Right. And I am that generation. So, you know, I identify with them just by being on a stage.
Sure.
You know, I'm not 27. So I have to figure out a way to identify with the 27-year-old at my age. Mm-hmm. And I don't even know that I'm that successful at that. So, I mean, I'm just being real, that I think there comes a point when you really can't anymore. And so we have younger communicators.
Yeah. Also,
it isn't just me. But I still think that there's a value in the father being on the stage. Sure. You know, and speaking into that from, you know, with a few gray hairs or a lot of gray hairs or whatever. There's some wisdom there that you don't have that at 27.
Sure.
You just don't.
True.
So that's kind of how we do it. But I try to speak more into that younger person's life than the older. But again, everybody's facing the same thing.
Issues.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, and it all funnels through, and you can see this pretty evident if you attend or watch Journey Church online or anything, any sort of outward experience of it. The mission statement is making it easy to find and experience God, right? That's
yes.
Great. Yeah. And everything funnels through that, and you can see that. So, like, even when we're talking about this, how do you communicate with vast audience and this and that, it all funnels through that. And that's what is, in the end, being communicated through the experience.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And the 30-minute message isn't the only thing that happens that day. Mm-hmm. So that's me. Mm-hmm. But there's worship. Mm-hmm. And so if the worship team was all people with gray hair, and, you know, we were singing, you know, the hymns of the 1950s, that would be a really unwise marketing decision. Yeah. So we're getting the millennials, we're getting the next gen, or the Gen X folks, next gen Y.
Gen Y, yeah.
All those. Yeah. And then they got me. So, you know, we're really marketing to all of those ages. And really it's what happens during the week. You know, we put a lot of stock into Sunday, and frankly, that's really not the meat of the church. It's what happens during the week if you're in a life group, if you're serving somewhere. I mean, the 30-minute message, the worship part of the message is really for God. I mean, that's where we're going, God, this is for you. When we get to my part, that's not for God. He's not up in heaven going, that was a great point, Kevin. You know, let me just did you say that again? Let me take that down because that was really awesome. I mean, it's not for him. Yeah. Sure. That's for you all.
Yeah.
That's funny.
It's interesting because we just had a guest that talked about how a lot of large companies are starting to break their employees into pods, essentially creating small groups, you know, and they have to deal with certain things together. They're assigned certain tasks or whatever, but they have that group, and it helps them feel connected and valued, and they start to jump onto the manifesto of the company or the mission statement. And that it's just funny how the church culture can shift societal culture. Yeah. So, like, I feel like people, you know, the church gets a bad rap because there's extremists everywhere, right?
For sure.
It's, you know, but for some reason there's always a target on the church's back.
Yeah.
But when you look at the cultural aspect, I think there's a balance. The church is starting to allow certain things in, saying this is what our culture is doing, but then also influencing culture back. And I think that's like the most important part there is that's part of the communication of it, is that, I mean, even OJ and I, like, we attend church. Faith is built into what we do. And when we work with clients, they're not Christians, or they don't go to church, or some of them do, some of them don't. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't change how we communicate. It doesn't change the ideas that we come up with, the strategy that we come up with. And it's effective. you know.
Right.
But it's like it's so deep in us and drives who we are that it's just communicated that way. Like, and that becomes our marketing. And for us, I think, you know, we've realized recently that one of our biggest differentiators is the experience that you have when you work with us. You know, like, you know, we've said this before in a few episodes, anybody can do this stuff. You know, anybody with cameras can make a podcast with video and make it look pretty, right? Like, videographers are a dime a dozen, you know, freelancers everywhere.
Yeah,
but
you have like 95 of them on staff at your church.
Okay, that's not true. But
I'm sorry.
we know Steven. Steven's cool. He's great at what he does. But
he is great.
The difference is the experience, you know, for us, and the ideas that come from us and those kind of things. And for us, that was huge. And I think the difference at Journey Church is you're making it easy for people to find and experience God. And that's what it all boils down to in the end, you know?
I think as you're talking about marketing and the church has at time, and I love the church. You know, that's what I do. I'm connected 1,000% to the church. But we've been our own worst enemy at times.
Yeah.
You know, we haven't always behaved well. So we've been against everything, you know, and there's things that we just don't need to be against.
Right.
And that's been part of our marketing in a negative marketing kind of sense.
Yep.
That our philosophy is, let's be against what Jesus is against, but let's not expand the boundaries of what he's against, because he's not against everything.
Right.
Are there things that we can redeem? You know, so, you know, when I grew up, and this was the marketing of the church back in the 60s and the 70s, is that, you know, you don't go to a pool hall, or don't play cards, or, you know, there was alcohol issues and all those kinds of things. And some of those things Jesus speaks to, but some of them he doesn't speak to. Yeah. But we created more boundaries. Yeah. And that became, you know, synonymous with the church. And that became a negative marketing thing. And so just breaking out of some of that, you know, tattoos, you know, piercings, all of that, where, you know, I know. Everyone at this table has a tattoo.
Oh, that's right. You do have a tattoo. I forgot about
of them. Yeah, come on now.
You gonna take your shirt off and show everybody?
We would go there.
Not gonna do that.
Not gonna do that.
Terrible marketing for
terrible
Journey
marketing for Journey. Nah, that's not true. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, now we're going off the rails real fast. See, this is what happens when OJ gets involved.
Yep.
No, it's great. Well, PK, as always, it's amazing to be able to spend time with you.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm really glad that we touched on it. I thought it was awesome. Yeah. And I think the one thing that we like doing, and I don't really know how this relates, but to what we were just talking about, but one of the things that I like to do at the end of each podcast is, you know, takeaways. We want to give our audience or the people something to take away from this. You know, 1 to 2 things maybe that from this time together that you think other people that are involved in churches, because I'm sure that we'll probably have a lot of people that are in the church that are going to watch this episode, other pastors, things like that. What's some of that tangible stuff that they can take away from this conversation?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot, but first, I think let's be supportive of each other as churches around the city and the state and the country, because that's a negative marketing thing for the world too.
Oh, that's good.
When they just see us all like pounding each other. Yeah. I mean, that doesn't bring anybody to any of our churches. Yeah. Or it just brings like those people to our churches, if you know what I'm saying.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah. So let's bless each other and let's promote each other. Let's be marketers for one another.
Yes.
And then don't forget, I think, the younger generation. The church has been too long, and people say we're not marketers. You know, the church is not a marketer, and I go, but you are. You know, it's whoever you have is who you're marketing to. That's just look out on a Sunday. That's who you're marketing to. Even if you don't want to admit or use those words, that's who you're reaching. Yeah. So if that's not if you want to reach a bigger group, then, you know, figure that out. And so I would say care about the next generation. Yeah. Because that's the ones that at some point I got to take the church keys and go, here, they're yours. Yeah. and there better be some people there,
sure,
to do that with.
Yeah, absolutely.
So those are a couple things I think about.
I love it. Thanks so much for spending time with us today.
Pleasure.
All right, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, follow, do all those things. Ring that bell. Ding. Be sure to get notifications every time we put out a new episode on Fridays. Also, check out our IGTV for our recaps, and we will see you guys all later. Thank you so much. We love you. Thanks for spending time with us. Peace. Thanks again for checking out Be Original with Isley Creative.
We hope that this helps you put a little more you in your marketing.
Catch a new episode every week right here on the Be Original podcast.